want to talk about something vitally important to the future of America. Over the last year, we've seen progressive movements organize and mobilize all over the nation on a scale not seen since the civil rights and anti-war movements of the 1960s. It began in the cold of winter in Madison, Wisconsin last year when hundreds of thousands of workers stood up to fight for their rights to organize. Then this movement caught fire from New York to Oakland with the Occupy Wall Street movement, demanding a more equal economy. We are living in transformational, truly exciting times. Another time much like this was just after the Great Depression and during the Great Depression in 1936, when the forces of great wealth that had crashed our economy years earlier were again trying to seize power. And President Franklin Roosevelt, who came from a wealthy family and had formerly been a rather conventional governor of New York State, rallied young people across the nation by saying, "There is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given. Of other generations, much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny." I believe that today's generation of Americans, too, has a rendezvous with destiny. And this is the year with one of the most important elections in our history on the horizon, with democracy in the United States on the verge of disintegration. This year will profoundly shape our destiny. Right now, progressives have the momentum in America, and we're closer than at any time in the last 30 years to rolling back Reaganomics, undoing decades of economic and political control by the top 1%, and giving we the people a say in how the United States is run once again. The only question left is, can we stay together? Can we resist the temptations of infighting, of purity tests, of mistrust of each other? Unfortunately, that still remains to be seen. Just like in all political movements throughout history, below the surface, there's grumbling within the progressive movement. In General Assembly meetings, in blog posts, and emails, you can hear and see rifts developing. On the one hand, you have those who are part of the relatively leaderless Occupy movement, people who have mobilized both against wealth inequality, abuses on Wall Street, and against any sort of hierarchical organization, be it on the left or the right. It's not about left or right politics for them. It's about direct action and fundamentally changing the entire system to bring about a more egalitarian nation, and that's a noble cause. And on the other hand, you see larger and more established groups. You have groups like MoveOn.org and the AFL-CIO and even the Democratic Party, who see what's going on in the streets in America and see a well of vitality and activism that can bring about real political change in America. So can these two groups coexist? In my opinion, absolutely. For years, Tim Carpenter, the guy who helped start Progressive Democrats of America, has pursued both an outside and an inside approach to progressive change, one that includes on-the-street activism, picketing, and occupying, what he calls an outside strategy, combined with people walking into the halls of Congress, lobbying, phone banking, and fundraising, and even getting progressives to run for political office, what he calls an inside strategy. The most successful movements in history have combined both inside and outside strategies. No one in power, no one on the inside, is going to stand up and be a leader for a cause unless people on the outside are pushing them to do it. Here's the big secret about politics. Politicians are not leaders. They're followers. They wait for the parade to form outside, and then they jump in front of it with a flag and say, "Hey, this is my parade." That's how it's always worked. As Van Jones pointed out here last night, LBJ wasn't supposed to be the civil rights president. He was pushed into the role by pressure on the outside from the grassroots civil rights movement. What the civil rights movement and others from abolition to suffrage to ending the Vietnam War taught us is that there's a natural evolution to movement strategies. First, occupiers start occupying lunch counters, engaging in civil disobedience, and getting hosed in the streets. Then, like-minded but more established organizations see what's going on and organize marches and rallies and bring the issue to the forefront of the media, putting pressure on lawmakers. And then, sure enough, legislation is introduced and ultimately passed. Victory is only achieved because both inside and outside strategies are operating simultaneously. And progressive victories for America will be achieved in the exact same way. Those leaderless outside groups started this movement by occupying, by getting pepper sprayed in the streets and beaten by the police. And then the more established groups joined in to organize larger rallies, to inject more resources and funding into the movement, and to carry the message forward. And already, politicians are listening and introducing legislation based on what they're hearing in the streets. That is where we stand today. One election away from achieving either maintaining our momentum, or seeing it all take a giant step backwards. Keep that in mind as we move forward. If you want to be the person of the streets, holding Wall Street accountable and facing off against the institutions of power, then good on you. This movement needs you. And if you want to be the person working on the inside, meeting with elected officials, running for office, fundraising, then good on you too. True progressive change in America needs all of us, both on the outside and the inside. Those without leaders and those who work in more established venues. We're all needed to win. So let's get back to work this year and create an America that once again works for all of us. That's the big picture for tonight. For more information on the stories we covered, visit our websites at tomhartmann.com, freespeech.org, and rt.com.